Ladies and gentlemen, if you can hear me, clap once. If you can hear me, clap 2 times. If you can hear me, clap 3 times.
Hello, my name is Robin Ramirez. I am Kid First Lady. I think we all need a pep talk. What are you waiting for? Life is not a line at a theme park, people. The whole world is like a roller coaster, and it will move without you. You know what I realized? That the whole world is moving at once. For my little heartbeats, to the gigantic moon. For my little prominence, to Pluto. It's like we're all part of this dance. Some people say that Pluto is not a planet, but I think it is. Don't let anyone tell you that you're not important. Don't let anyone tell you you're not a planet. You make a difference. If you smile, the whole world will smile with you. If you move, the whole world will move with you. How will you make the whole world dance? How will you make your community dance? How will you make the Boys and Girls Club school sites dance? Slow motion.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, and welcome to Celebrating Great Futures. Tonight is about, as you may have guessed, celebration. Celebrating the futures of tens of thousands of members who've walked through the doors of the Boys and Girls Clubs since its opening in 1958. Celebrating the futures of almost 2,000 members, including Robin, our future First Lady, who attends one of our 8 locations every day, and celebrating 20 years of our Center for a New Generation program and our strong partnerships with schools. And it's also about celebrating the future of our community and the impact we can make when we work together. I'm Martell Wynn, an alumnus of the Boys and Girls Clubs of the Peninsula's Center for a New Generation program. And with me this evening is Nancy Orosio, an alumna of the Boys and Girls Club of the Peninsula, and a really good friend of mine.
Martell and I grew up together through the Boys and Girls Clubs while at Sacred Heart Prep and now at Santa Clara University. But friends, regardless of midterms and of studying, we couldn't miss celebrating with you tonight.
And not at all, it's been a great opportunity to meet so many wonderful and inspiring people, so we're truly blessed to be here tonight.
Martell and I are from East Palo Alto and Eastern Redwood City, which are 2 neighborhoods that are filled with challenges ranging from gang violence, peer pressure, crowded classrooms, and single-parent homes, where around half of the students drop out of high school.
But with guidance, support, and access to opportunities, youth from these neighborhoods, like us, can overcome the obstacles set before them. They are breaking down barriers, stopping the cycle, and creating great futures filled with education, career, and opportunity. Now, I'd like to invite to the stage a very important person to the Boys and Girls Clubs all across the nation, a man who works to inspire the whole nation to work together for the futures of youth. He flew all the way from Atlanta to be with us tonight. Please help me welcome the CEO and President of the Boys and Girls Clubs of America, Mr. Jim Clark.
Well, thank you, Nancy and Markel. Great introduction, and what great products of Boys and Girls Clubs and Center for New Generation. Let's give them one more round of applause. They said it, we're here to celebrate. We're here to celebrate 20 years with the Center of New Generation and our partnership with schools, and also to celebrate the wonderful accomplishments right here at the Boys and Girls Clubs of the Peninsula. And I wanted to spend just a couple minutes to also say thank you to everyone in this room for the dedication, the commitment, and the support that you provide to this wonderful organization, and most importantly, to the kids that do come through the doors at Boys and Girls Clubs right here in the Peninsula. You had a choice tonight probably to do many different things, but you made a choice to be here, to be with us, to celebrate. And I guarantee you there'll be a return on your investment. And the return comes in the Markells and the Nancys and the others that you'll meet tonight, the products of the Boys and Girls Clubs and the Center for New Generation. And it really is about partnership. 20 years ago, two visionaries, Condoleezza Rice and Susan Ford Dorsey, came together to create the Center for New Generation, and later to partner with the Boys and Girls Clubs and Boys and Girls Clubs of America. We're happy that the program has expanded, and also happy to announce that it will continue to expand to other communities and to other cities across the country, so that other children in America can benefit from this wonderful program and partnership. So I want to add my thanks and congratulations to both Condoleezza Rice and Susan Ford Dorsey for their vision, for their inspiration in creating this fabulous program and partnership. Let's give them a round of applause. Finally, it's always great to be with individuals of like mind, and tonight is special for that as well, because both Susan and Condoleezza share two very, very special concepts near and dear to all of our hearts. And it's about kids, and it's about the future of America. And those two are synonymous. They're the same, because our kids are the future, and they're the future of this great nation. So, two extraordinary individuals, two great Americans, and two great human beings. But let me also share with you, there's another great individual in the room that is the leader of the Boys and Girls Clubs of the Peninsula. And he does a wonderful job and has done a tremendous job in leading this organization to greatness. The Boys and Girls Clubs of the Peninsula is one of the leaders in our movement across the nation of all Boys and Girls Clubs. They're innovative, they're creative, they do form partnerships, and it's always with the kids' best interest in mind. So it's my job also tonight to introduce that great leader to you, Peter Fortenbaugh, the Chief Executive Officer of the Boys and Girls Clubs of the Peninsula. Peter?
Thank you, Jim. So, thank you so much, Jim. Thanks for being here from Atlanta and sharing time with us and helping celebrate. I just realized that next time we have an event honoring Susan and Condi, I think we'll have to go to Moffett Airfield or something, because I apologize for the crowded situation, but thank you all for being here and squeezing in. Silicon Valley is an amazing place to live. I can't imagine anywhere else on the planet that I'd rather live and raise a family. The entrepreneurship, the innovation, the energy, the creativity. It's all about the future. It's not stuck in the past. It's thinking about the future and where we're headed. It's so inspirational and such an energizing and fun place to live. And I'm just really, really blessed to live here. But it's not great for all of our members. We all hear about the increasing income gap and disparity that exists in our country. And nowhere is the middle class more squeezed than right here in our own community. In the last 2 years alone, while incomes for whites have gone up 4%, for Latinos have gone down 5%, and for African Americans have gone down 18%. When I was a child, 11% of the kids in California were growing up in poverty. A generation later, that number has more than doubled. About 1 out of 4 kids today in California are growing up in poverty. And education, the great equalizer, is not working for all of our kids. Right here, in the heart of Silicon Valley, in the neighborhoods served by the Boys and Girls Clubs, half of the young people are dropping out of high school. And it's our experience that these kids aren't dropping out of high school like it's some active decision. They're more drifting out of high school. They're making a series of very small incremental decisions that result in them not being able to complete high school. And the root causes of that are several, but it starts off with they don't see a connection between school and their future. They don't know why school is relevant. Why should they do the algebra homework? Who cares if they cut class? They can take algebra later. It's no big deal. And for most of the kids, their parent did not graduate from high school either. Only 7% of these kids have a parent who graduated from college. So they may lack the role models in terms of why education is important. They may not see the clear future. A lot of them are under incredible stress for short-term pressure that comes at the expense of long-term goals. So the long-term goals are admirable when you're dealing with short-term issues of tremendous violence, drugs, gangs, and safety, food, and housing. It's not always easy to think long-term. And we see this over and over and over again with our kids, who maybe when they're in high school have to take part-time jobs so they can help fund their family and pay for the rent, which results in them taking fewer classes, not doing their homework, and gradually, with every intention of graduating from high school, gradually falling too far behind if they don't make it. It's our belief, however, that the schools are part of the solution. Schools are not the root cause of the problem. And Dr. Rice and Mrs. Dorsey recognized this 20 years ago when they founded the Center for New Generation, which then merged with the Boys and Girls Club 15 years ago. And at the time, that was a very innovative private school partnership. And it's grown tremendously in the last 20 years. And it's evolved us as an organization of Boys and Girls Clubs as well, to the point now where we're no longer a typical Boys and Girls Clubs that you think of like an after-school program, a rec center, a place that kids go and hang out. We've evolved to become much more of an expanded learning time partner with schools. And what that means is quite different from what you're used to. It's having full-time staff located on school campuses. And by the way, I know a lot of our school partners are here tonight, so I want to thank you, whether you are, for being here tonight. It's a pleasure working with all of our school partners. So it's having full-time people working with the principals, the teachers, to figure out what the kids need. It's providing longer learning days. So it's 3 hours after school the kids come to get homework, tutoring, art, enrichment. It's not a longer school day. It's not more school, but it's more learning. And we provide summer instruction for them. So much of this achievement gap is due to summer learning loss. So we hire certified teachers, provide 6 hours a day of summer programming for our kids on the school campuses. And it also includes in-school day support. So we provide maybe lunchtime intramurals, or a student government class, a magazine class, a school press, leadership class, technology, or maybe sports programs to make the school day more fun. We work with the schools to be a bridge between the schools and the families. So many of the families want to support their kids academically very much, but they're not sure how. Maybe the community from where they came from, the parents don't get involved in the schools as much. So we help build a bridge between the families and the schools. And overall, we're providing over 1,000 hours a year of additional learning time for the at-risk kids in our neighborhoods. And that's what the kids need, and that's what's helping them graduate from high school. And that's what's helping them graduate from high school ready for a college or career. Because we know right now in Silicon Valley, if you don't graduate from high school and get at least 2 years of advanced degree, it's going to be impossible to support your family. So it's our vision that all the youth in our community grow up to become economically self-sufficient adults. We have a school partnership model that's worked. It's got 20 years of track record. It's continuing to expand. We're going to continue to grow it. And I want to thank you all for being here tonight to learn more about it. I ask you to come visit. We welcome your partnership. Please get involved, because together with your partnership, we can make Silicon Valley a great place for all of our kids to grow up. Thank you very much.
We would like to invite you to enjoy your dinner. However, not before thanking our sponsors who made this night possible. Here we go. Without thanking them for making this evening possible and for their commitment to Boys and Girls Clubs of the Peninsula.
Right now there's a dropout crisis within our communities. The kids now, they aren't having a place to go after school, and their parents may be still at work.
Growing up around here, it's pretty difficult because our district is seen to be told that we're most likely to drop out of high school and not make it to college.
For us, this is not a separate program. We are committed from 8 to 6 to our students, and that's what we do.
We run academic enrichment. Also, we run electives, basically, that will give the kids a chance to possibly do something that they don't get during the school days.
Our partnership with Boys and Girls Club, it's crucial for the success of our school program and the success of our students.
They allowed me to go places that I never thought I'd go. They allowed me to meet some very influential people that I never thought I'd get the chance of meeting. So that's why I'm here now.
Participating was really great because it made me feel successful. It made me become someone great, like a person that people knew about me.
I have a 5th grade student who started here having a very, very difficult time. He had a lot of emotional needs. Family situation was very difficult. He joined the program. He found Jose, he found the mentors, he immediately connected with them. And if you see this child throughout these 3 years that I've been here, you see another child. You see a child who is shining in 5th grade, a child who is very excited to become a 6th grader, and also a child who just loves to be in the program, connecting with the mentors. Is that youth component? Is that a connection with the mentors, with Jose, with Lupe, with Fabi, that makes the program special, because they see themselves reflected in all these people around them. And that's what we want for them. We want to offer them the opportunity to shine and to be successful.
I mean, Boys and Girls Club has a motto, "A great future start here," and I'm no doubt about it. It's true, because I'm going to Sacred Heart, and I could have done it without the help of Boys and Girls Club.
I personally think that I can go far in my life, and BGCP in my school thinks that too, and they're encouraging me to do better. There's no doubt that BGCP at my school will give up on me, and nor will my parents, and I'm grateful for that.
Okay, well, thank you again, everybody, for being here. I hope you got a little bit of a glimpse into what we're doing with our school site programs. I hope dinner was good. But we're here tonight to celebrate 20 years of our school site programs. And so I'd like to ask the 2 founders of our Center for New Generation program, Dr. Condoleezza Rice and Mrs. Susan Ford Dorsey, to join me here, please, on the stage. So, Condi and Susan, I just want to thank you so much for your incredible vision 20 years ago to understand the needs of our school, of our students, how we could partner better with schools, and the innovative program that you developed and implemented, and how it's grown. I hope you're proud of what's happened to it in the last 20 years, and how it will continue to grow, and how it's becoming a model, and how it's transformed not just us, but boys and girls clubs across America. And I'm just so personally thrilled, we all are, that you've stayed involved. You didn't just found it and then go away, but you're still involved. You've traveled a few countries and had a few jobs in the meantime. But you came back, and you still meet with our kids on a regular basis, at least once a year. And personally, for me, it's very inspiring to be working with both of you and your partnership. So I want to thank you so much for your vision, your partnership, and here's another great 20 years of Center for New Generation. Thank you so much. So this brings us to the highlight of the evening, which is actually going to be a conversation with Susan and Condi talking about their lives, education, the history of Center for New Generation, and where it's going in the future. And they'll be joined in conversation with Martella and Nancy again. So you guys have a seat. And Nancy, may I turn it over to you, please?
Of course. Well, it's great to see both of you, Dr. Rice, Mrs. Ford Dorsey. We will have a couple of minutes after our conversation for the audience if you guys have any questions. So make sure you have those ready. And Dr. Rice, Mrs. Ford Dorsey, I just wanted to thank you for your continuous involvement and your commitment to BGCP and Center for New Generation. I know Martell and I, it's been a transforming experience, and we are very grateful. So thank you. So, Dr. Rice, I understand you have some questions for us.
I do. Right here. I'm sure that the audience would like to know a little bit more about you. And I would like to know how you would describe the challenges that you faced and how the experiences that you've had have helped you to meet those challenges.
Ladies first.
Oh, ladies first, okay.
Well, thank you, Martell. Well, I come from a family of immigrants. My parents immigrated to this country when I was 11 months old. And I grew up in a family where we sometimes had to decide whether we would buy school supplies or whether we would pay the bills. And having parents who didn't finish middle school was really tough. In terms of knowing what the expectations were and how we had to navigate the educational system. I'm very grateful to my parents because they were able to pull me through their hard work. Some of the challenges that I faced throughout my middle school years and my high school years was seeing my friends be lost to drug addictions and gang violence, as well as teenage pregnancies, and substance abuse is something that was very prevalent in the community that I grew up with. But I'm very grateful because my parents kept me on the right track, and I found great mentors that were able to pull me through.
Yeah, and I definitely can share the same sentiment. It's easy for me to say that I've come from a background it's easy to say that you can stereotype it. I've had family issues in the past, and, my family's dealt with problems such as substance abuse, homelessness, poverty, sickness. So that's all been a part of my life. It's been a personal experience, but at the same time, to bring it back to the community, that's something that, it's not common. Or it is common. It's not unique to me. This is something that people face, in neighborhoods like Redwood City and East Palo Alto. It's a daily reality for them. And so, when you couple that with issues such as not having opportunities and not having proper resources, I think, that really comes back to the obstacles that, I've faced, but also other individuals face all the time. And it's really that combination that really makes it an issue for people, not having, the expectations. People don't have the proper expectations. They think that just because you come from a certain neighborhood or a certain city that you're going to turn out a certain way. They have they have notions set in advance of who you are and what you'll be based on where you come from. They don't give you the opportunity, and they write you off in advance. So those are definitely some of the issues that, I've faced and I've been able to overcome with a lot of help and support. But, these are issues that everybody else in these neighborhoods, they have as well.
So one question for you ladies would be, what inspired both of you to form the Center for a New Generation 20 years ago?
Well, I will tell the story of how Susan and I came to found the Center for a New Generation. I had been in Washington working for the administration of President George H.W. Bush, and my father had moved to Palo Alto after my mother's death, and he was living here, and I was off in Washington, something that he reminded me of all the time. He said, "You came and you went to Washington." But my father was, those of you who knew him, a go-getter. He was somebody who was always involved in the community. And when I came back from Washington, he had become deeply involved in East Palo Alto in working with the Ravenswood School District. And he said a friend of mine, who was at the time the superintendent, Charlie May Knight, he said, would like you to give the commencement address for Ravenswood School District. I said, sure. And so in this high school gym, we had the commencement. And I said to Charlie, I said, you know, this is an awfully elaborate commencement for 8th grade. And she said, shockingly, that's because for most of these kids, this is the last commencement they will have, because 70% of them will drop out before they finish high school. And I took my breath away, frankly, and I thought, how could I have lived in this area for so long and have never encountered that problem until that very day, because I had come to Stanford in 1981. And so I asked Charlie, what could we do to help? And she talked about the absence of, or the dearth of after-school experiences, and particularly enrichment experiences. And I want to just second something that Martel said. Very often when kids come out of a particular background, it's very easy for the system to start dismissing them as they're not going to be able to do this. They're a statistic. And so we were trying to do something that would intervene so that nobody felt a statistic. People would feel special. So I thought, how am I going to pull this off? And that's when I went to see my good friend, Susan, at the time Ford. You remember Susan's husband, Tom Ford, was a great philanthropist, her late husband. And so I went to see Susan, and I said, Susan, I think we've got a project.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did. The question that I have is, has the Center for New Generation sort of met my expectations? And I've been thinking about that today, and certainly the answer is yes, and of course it's actually exceeded my expectations. And not just because it has grown, and it has grown significantly from one site and 2 sites to multiple sites, and we are really so proud of what it has done. But we're not just proud of the fact that there are more kids served, although that is an achievement in and of itself. But I think what I'm most proudest of is that it has really stuck to its principles, and that's not always been easy, because the demands with each new generation of kids is more intense. The schools are not able to do as much as they did with prior generations, and so there's been a lot of intense demand for the Center for New Generation types of programs. But our founding principle was that programs and enhancements such as dance and music and drama were an essential ingredients to an overall education. What Condi didn't say, and I remember one of the things that was so compelling, and she talks about it frequently and with such passion. Growing up in Birmingham, Alabama in the 60s, in the segregated South, her community was so tight and provided the opportunities that you wouldn't necessarily think that she would have. The dance lessons. She wasn't that great at ballet. She won't tell you that, but she told me. She was good at music, however, so she did the piano, the French. You know, those kinds of things. The community really rallied around and provided that kind of support. And I think that's what many of us grew up with. The opportunity, even if you came from a middle-class family, not even a wealthy family, you could access those kinds of things, and that has completely dropped off of the offerings for young people in poor communities. And that was what we thought having a band was really important for the Center for New Generation, and having music. And it has continued to be an essential value that the Center for New Generation has held dear, and I think it's made a real difference. So we're very, I think, proud that it has endured. We were laughing about the fact that it was a startup, and maybe by definition, you don't really know what you're doing in a startup. And we certainly did not completely know what we were doing, but we did have a complete commitment to the future of the kids in these communities, that they, in fact, would have exposure to these important elements, in addition to the academic kind of support.
Well, you actually took the question I was going to ask.
I have another question. So, Dr. Rice, you have tied our educational decline to our national security and the nature of our democracy in the past. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Sure. When you're Secretary of State, you get to go around the world and you get to see what people admire about the United States, what they don't. You recognize that sometimes, even though they're very glad that there are men and women who volunteer at the front lines of freedom to defend us, sometimes our military power is a little overwhelming to people, or our economic penetration is a little much. But I've always said that the one thing that I always saw great admiration for was what I call our great national creed, and that is, it doesn't matter where you came from, it matters where you're going. You can come from humble circumstances and you can do great things. And that has caused people to come here from all over, like Nancy's parents, immigrants, to be a part of that. And it's caused people to be able to move across class, not to be prisoners of where they were born. Your class was not necessarily the end of where you would be. It was only the beginning. But all of that, particularly the ability to break out of class, meant that you had to have a high-quality education. And increasingly, as I've said, I can look at your zip code and I can tell whether you're going to get a good education. And that is going to tear us apart, because if you think about what the United States of America is, it's not held together by ethnicity or blood or religion. It's held together by this belief that you can come from humble circumstances and do great things. And I'm concerned that since our educational system is clearly failing, so many of our kids, particularly our kids who come from challenged circumstances, we're going to have people who are unemployed because do you want to try to get a job in this environment when you can't read? And those people will live on the government dole because they'll have no place else to go. And we'll continue to have the situation that we have now, where only 30% of the people who take the basic skills test to get into the military can pass it. And we will, in fact, tear ourselves apart, because we will be one society that is prepared and another that is not. And when that happens, people become aggrieved. Why don't I have? And pretty soon then you have aggrievement's twin brother, entitlement, shows up. Why don't they give me? And at that point, the whole sense that the United States is a place of strivers, a place of people who really believe that you can overcome circumstances. You may not be able to control your circumstances, but you can control your response to your circumstances. We will have lost that. And so I've called the crisis in K-12 education the greatest national security threat that we face. No country in the world can do to us no country in the world can do to us more than anything worse than we can do to ourselves if we don't educate our kids. And just one other thing, one reason that I think it's so important, what both Peter and Jim spoke to about the ability to extend the learning day through programs at the Boys and Girls Clubs and Center for a New Generation clubs in schools. We have the shortest learning day and the shortest learning year of any industrialized country in the world. And so the ability to provide for kids after school is not just a nice to do, it's a necessity.
So, Martel, and how did the Boys and Girls Club and the Center for a New Generation help you get to where you are today?
Okay, so it really is connected to what I mentioned earlier, opportunity and resources. I'm an alumnus of both the Boys and Girls Club and CNG, and I think it's really been influential in the fact that, yes, it does cater to academics, but it really is a place for support and great role models. And personally, that's not just a statement, that's something that's happened in my life. And it's continued to this day. It really takes people investing in you and giving you their time to make sure that you actually can have the opportunities that everyone else has. Be able to experience the wealth of knowledge that individuals have when they're very successful and they're willing to actually give back. And so that's really hit home for me because, I've had mentors that I've met all the way back in the Boys and Girls Club when I first joined, like Connie Heldman, who continues to be a mentor today, And even more so than that, mentors at CNG that, I could call up when I'm trying to decide where I want to go to college. And he's like, if you get into Santa Clara and if you have a full ride, you go there. That's a great school. It's people like that that have given me, their time, their effort, invested in me. They've been a resource. And it's really that has, provided me and been a support system for me, in addition to the regular programs, extending the academic day like you were talking about. I remember when I was a kid and I used to go to the club, before you can actually go out and participate and do all the extracurriculars, you had to do your homework first. So I couldn't go out and I couldn't shoot pool before I worked on my math homework. And so, it's those requirements and it's that structure that has been helpful. And I've gotten that through both the Boys and Girls Club and CNG. So really those opportunities, the academics as well as the extracurriculars, being able to be involved in programs like Reading Wizards where I can cater to my natural interest, or, technology clubs where I have the chance to, mess around with Legos and build machines that, I might not have the opportunity to do any other time. So really those opportunities, resources, and, extension of academics and extracurriculars, that's really what the clubs and, its programs have given to me.
That's great. Nick. And Nancy, how about you?
Well, I think I have to echo what Martel said. It's truly a place where kids' dreams become tangible goals, where you find people who care about you and who believe in you. And when you are a 10-year-old and somebody believes in you, that makes all the difference in the world for your future. I saw opportunities at the Boys and Girls Club that I had never thought about before. They teach you about networking. There's programs that help you if you're struggling academically. I know they provided me with tutors when I was struggling with physics in high school. Science has never been my forte. But they've given me opportunities to stand up in front of crowds and deliver speeches to people and to get out of my comfort zone, something that that doesn't happen in school or that much likely at home. I also found mentors like Tracy Kuhn and Connie, like for Martel. And those are people who, like Martel said, they start with you when you're in high school or in middle school, but they are long-lasting relationships that matter and that make a difference in the world. I know I wouldn't be at Santa Clara without the support of the Boys and Girls Club. I know I would have never made it to Sacred Heart without the Boys and Girls Club. And it's the relationships that you build there, people who care, people who demonstrate that there is something more than just school and that there's a future for you and that you don't have to be a statistic.
And so I have a question for you, Dr. Rice.
Yes, Martel.
So, we all know you've been successful, you've traveled the world, you've had a wealth of experience. And is it the drive to further education that you spoke about earlier, that, has that affected what has made you stay so involved with CNG after coming back from being, in the largest of government, being at the highest classes? Is that what really has kept you involved?
Yes. Well, I came back this is my home, and I continue to love to be involved in young people's lives, and that's my students at Stanford, and it's also CNG. And while I was secretary, actually, some people came to see me at the State Department. Some of the CNG students came by the State Department, so people would remind me from time to time. I remember getting a big poster. Yeah, there we go. There we go. Yeah. That's my office at the State Department, by the way. looks like our office is at Hoover, right, Mike? Somebody, they sent me a big poster with the CNG kids, so I was always being reminded. So it was great to come back and see, by the way, that so many people who had been part of CNG were still involved. One of the founding board members of CNG, Larry Triplett, is here tonight, and we could not have done it without him. Yeah, where is he? Yeah. And also, I just have to say that Jackie Glaster, who was the executive director of the Boys and Girls Clubs of Peninsula when we joined with the Boys and Girls Clubs, is here, as well as, so Jackie.
Well, Mrs. Dorsey, I have one question for you.
Yes, okay.
The past and current successes of your program, given the past and current successes of your program, what would you like to see next?
That's a great question. Well, certainly more sites, deeper partnership with the schools. I think that's exactly the direction that CNG and the Boys and Girls Club needs to continue to do. Not at the expense of the clubhouses. The clubhouses are very special, and they're iconic, and they serve an incredibly important role. But it's also important to go where the kids are, and the kids need to spend the time in schools. That's because of transportation issues, that's where they are. And the model has proven to be very effective over the last 20 years. So I certainly think that continuing to do the good work is important. I also think, and I really appreciate Peter's perspective, he's always looking over the horizon, and I think that's what an executive director needs to do, and that's what board members need to do, and that's what donors need to encourage organizations to do. You know, look around the corner, try to figure out what is the next big thing, or the next need that is going to need to be met. And one of the things that I've talked to Peter a lot about, and I know he's pursuing, is the involvement of sort of character development curriculum, if you will, into the curriculum of a CNG or to an after school or a program, an education enhancement kind of program. The research has shown that in addition to studying and getting good scores and getting good grades, that there are other sort of characteristics that account for success, especially in kids who come from disadvantaged backgrounds. And that includes self-control. It includes grit. You might have heard a lot about grit and zest. And there's some very interesting information that is coming out and about sort of how you encourage this or you teach this. And it applies to kids from wealthier environments as well, although as I read somewhere that you have to be careful about telling some schools that their kids need to develop grit, because next thing you know there will be grit tutors and people will try to figure out how they can have grit internships and, you know, to enhance their resumes for college. But there's a lot of truth to it, and there's actually work that mentors and the program staff of these nonprofits can really follow to help our kids persevere, because it's tough. The other thing that I'm spending a lot of time on and thinking about is not just getting kids to college. It used to be 5-10 years ago. That was kind of the gold standard. You know, everybody worked hard to get kids to college. I think there's more sophisticated thinking now about, number one, not all kids need to go to college or should go to college, that there needs to be attractive avenues, and people need to be able to support their families even if they have 2 years of college or they don't complete college. The community college system, for example. But I think there's also much more attention being paid to getting kids through college, not just two. The graduation rates of low-income kids in a 6-year period of time are shockingly low. I mean, 30% of kids who start college do not necessarily finish college. And that's a real issue. So you see programs, and including the Boys and Girls Club and the Center for New Generation, and Eastside Prep and College Track, thinking about how can we support our kids through the college process, and not just leave it up to the colleges to do that, because there's so many tugs on kids to leave college. It's expensive, it's tough family issues. So achieving, like Martell, who is graduating this year, we're very excited about that. That's a harder achievement than it was, a generation ago. So you should be particularly proud of that. So those are the kinds of things I think that the Center for New Generation needs to continue to work on, and the Boys and Girls Club needs to continue to meet the intense demands of the kids these days from poorer families.
So we would now like to open the conversation up to the audience. We have a couple of minutes for some questions. I think there are some microphones on each side of the room.
There's one.
Test.
I have a question about incentive. So why did you start with the Boys and Girls Club, and what kept you going? Because there's been some discussion about financial incentives if kids get certain GPAs or if they make it through high school, guaranteeing a place in college. But that doesn't sound like that's what motivated you. So I'd like to know about incentives.
Well, personally, my backstory doesn't necessarily involve incentives, more so necessity. My sister raised me for a good portion of my life, just because my mother was out of the picture. And she has always tried to keep me in programs involved in enrichment. And before there was a YMCA, there used to be a recreational center in East Palo Alto. And that was where I met one of my first mentors. And he actually went to work for the Boys and Girls Club. And so by meeting him and, being mentored by him a little bit, and, it was that opportunity to follow him to the Boys and Girls Club, which actually led me through the doors. And so it wasn't incentive-based, it was more need-based, the place where I can go while my sister worked, some place where I can get additional focus for academics, but the opportunity to be involved in like summer programs. So I think you have to think about it multiple ways. Yes, there is some incentive, but in neighborhoods like East Palo Alto and Redwood City, it's kind of hard for students to think about what they need to do, in a sense, just because they don't know what's out there in the world at large, in a sense. So, they're more concerned with what's relative. And for me, it was, where could I go while my sister worked? And, that's what put me through the doors of the Boys and Girls Club. And I'm thankful because of the opportunities that's provided me with. But sometimes it's not about incentive, but more so necessity. And I think that's a very important thing when you kind of look at what needs to be done in communities like this. You need to focus on what the students need and what people, it is incentive-based in a sense, but, what really do people need? What can you do to get them through the doors? And it's been a good, as long as it continues to be a support system like it has been, then that is its own marketing. That's when people start to tell their friends about the system. That's when I can say, oh, this is my friend, Connie, he wants to do this in life, but I think he needs some help too, so it's those connections, they kind of make themselves. But yeah, I think it's more need-based, and that's where it happened for me.
Hi, good evening. This is such a lovely event. My name is Cynthia Jackson, and I'm the fitness director at Facebook. I'm really honored to be here tonight. And I have a question for Martell and Nancy. So I run a fitness program that's for the Bellhaven Boys and Girls Club, and I was inspired 7 years ago to come up with this idea when I heard President Clinton speak at the International Health and Sports Conference in Las Vegas. And this was at the time when childhood obesity was first starting to, become a national conversation. And he challenged us in the fitness industry to find ways that we could go out into our communities and make a difference for these children. So at my last job, there wasn't very much interest in my idea. But when I came to Facebook, Facebook is so committed to partnering with the community that they very much wanted to be behind this. And I have a terrific instructor who partners with me from the Miami Zumba culture. and she teaches a Thursday night Zumba class, and I teach a Tuesday night fitness class. And we work with James Harris, and we're just really pleased to be there. My question for the two of you is, what advice would you give us to help encourage the children to be more interested in fitness? They really do enjoy the Zumba very much. I have had children who they've never done a push-up before. I talk to them about Michelle Obama and, isn't she inspiring? And they want to look like her, but then they don't really want to do the work. So you've been there. So my question for you, while I have a captive audience, is what can we do to help inspire these kids and reach these kids in a way that you can help us with that? I would really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Nancy?
Well, what I would say is building those relationships. When you have personal relationships, it makes you want to go. It makes you have a reason of why to be there. I think that when you have a mentor, when you have a role model that you've connected to, then it's more of an incentive to go. Also, sometimes it might be because you feel like, geez, if I let them down, then that's gonna look bad on me, or I don't want them to be nagging me later, or like to be bugging me to go. So the kids will want to go. I think definitely those personal relationships will make a difference.
Oh, sorry. Waiting on my response too. Yeah, I know. I echo the same thing as Nancy. Being able to build relationships with people, that's what gets people to keep coming back. When you can connect to them personally, it's on a person-to-person basis where you can really get to know someone. And when you get to know them, then you kind of get to know what makes them tick and what they need and maybe what they don't realize they need. And it's those things that you can really get and draw people in. And, just through coursework, I've come to, those things that you're talking about, exercise and fitness, I've learned about the importance of them just because in neighborhoods and, communities where your socioeconomic status is so low, you don't have the opportunity to really focus on your health at times. Your parents can't go to the good grocery stores to get you, the healthier food. You're stuck going to McDonald's. There's 2 McDonald's in East Palo Alto. And so, your parents are forced to go to those places, and you don't get the benefit of things like exercise. So, like Nancy said, I think that's really important, building those connections. And I think it's important that you think about that because that's what students need, that's what kids need, because when their parents can afford certain things, there have to be alternatives. And so when they can't provide, there needs to be programs like what Facebook is doing that could really step in and get students to do something that's fun. Kids like to do stuff that's fun, so if you can make it attractive to them and make it seem cool, kids are all about things that are cool. So if you make it seem like it's fun and everybody else is doing it in a sense, then that's what draws them in. So building those relationships and making it fun, that's what really can attract kids. And like I said, it's very important just because it's easy for communities to not be able to get that good nutrition and the things that a normal or a person with better opportunities would be able to get. Yeah.
I think we have one more question.
Hi, Nancy Martell. My name's Doug Kelly, and I have 3 kids under 7. I have to say I'd be proud if they came out anything like you guys. And I just wanted to ask you, I want to talk specifically to Nancy. I'm sure Martell has his own story, but I'm curious about the people that you've lost and the people that you weren't able to reach out to. And the organization didn't quite answer their call. What could the organization do to maybe help them?
It's something really hard to talk about, so I'm sorry. I apologize in advance. I know that part of the problem was at home. Part of the problem started at home. And I know that we have parents at the Boys and Girls Club who are really involved or who try to be involved. But I know that there's peers who don't have the benefit of their parents being as involved in the school or in the Boys and Girls Club. And I think those are the kids that get lost through the cracks. And I think those are the kids that need the most help and that need the most outreach too. I think something that I think would be critical would be engaging the parents somehow. Whether that be a parent committee, whether that be something for the parents to see what is going on at CNG, at Boys and Girls Club, classes, orientations, whatever it is, but to get the parents involved will make all the difference in the world. Because you can do so much at school. Teachers can only do so much at school. Boys and Girls Club staff can only do so much at the Boys and Girls Club and at CNG. And in the end, the kids go back to their homes. And what happens there also matters. So. Well, with that, I think we have reached an end. Dr. Rice, thank you very much for being here. Mrs. Ford Dorsey, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you both.
Martell and I are very grateful for your commitment and for everything you have done for kids like us.
Thank you all very much. Thank you for standing, and for Martell and for Nancy. And we're actually, Condi and I are so delighted the questions were directed towards them. It just shows such respect for them and for what they have gone through and all that they have achieved. So now we've come to the portion of our evening where we get to tell you a little bit about the plans, the future plans for the Boys and Girls Club. I will start off by saying that in my position and work through the Sandhill Foundation, I spend quite a bit of time thinking about how to encourage poor kids to go to college. I think about tutoring, I think about the enhancement programs that we've talked about, I think about scholarships, I think about the families that Nancy so articulately mentioned. And I also have the opportunity to meet all kinds of nonprofit leaders and people who are doing work similar to what Peter's is. And it's an extraordinary experience because these are people who do this kind of work out of the goodness of their heart. They're not going to make a lot of money being executive director of a nonprofit organization. They do it because they care about the kids and they want to see have a life where they feel like it matters what they do. Peter is one of a kind. He is extraordinarily committed. He is smart. He is one of those who looks over the horizon and can think about what needs to happen next. And he is a real visionary, and this community is very lucky to have him and to have the Boys and Girls Club. You look around. And you look around the room and you see the original supporters of the Boys and Girls Club that goes back 40, 50 years, and it's really very, very impressive. And we're excited today to stand up here to say that the Boys and Girls Club is launching a $7 million growth campaign, if you will. And the intent is to help build out the programs, the school site programs, as well as support the ones that exist. This is really the first time that the Boys and Girls Club has undertaken a campaign that is not a building campaign, and we feel very fortunate, Condi and I do, to be the co-chairs of that campaign. And we have already, thank you, sweetie.
Thank you, Michael.
And we have already reached $3.5 million of the $7 million. We're happy to say that. So I would like to thank those of you who have stepped up early and have been so generous, and we would like to encourage those of you who are here tonight who would like to be part of our team to do so. We would love to exceed that goal because the need is so tremendous, and you've seen two incredible examples here today of what is possible. The kids in our community deserve our support. All kids deserve our support. And we know that there is just a huge benefit that comes from investing in these young people. So thank you very much. I'll let Connie finish up.
Thank you. Well, I want to join Susan in thanking you very much for being here. I think we're really blown away by the response and just so grateful that you're here. This is the time for a campaign for the Boys and Girls Clubs, and especially for the educational programs, the opportunities to expand opportunities through the Center for New Generation or the school site programs. And that's why I'm very proud to join Susan as a co-chair of this campaign. And I just want to ask you to think hard about what you might be able to do to support this effort. Peter and his staff have done a wonderful job of putting together a case statement, putting together a kind of little pyramid that would let you know what you might be able to support at different levels of giving, because we're trying to expand this program. It is in great demand. The schools are just clamoring to be able to have centers in the schools. And so we know we're meeting a need. We know we're meeting a need because the statistics show us that, but we really know we're meeting a need when we see what happens to kids that have been through these programs. Because when you have Martell and Nancy here, you see what's really possible, that there really are great futures out there, that every life is worthy, and not only that, every life is worthy of greatness. So I want to ask you to help us in any way that you can to make these wonderful programs more available, more widely available for the children of the Peninsula. Thank you very much.
And now Peter will come up to tell you things that we forgot to tell you.
That's it. We've all been here long enough tonight. I want to thank you all for being here. I have such an honor being at the Boys and Girls Clubs. You had some wonderful words. I really appreciate those deeply. But it's part of an amazing partnership. We've got an amazing staff at the Boys and Girls Club. We have amazing kids. We have amazing school partners. We've got a wonderful board of directors. We have fabulous supporters. And it's all part of a team coming together in a community. So I want to thank you for being part of our community. Let's make this a great place for all of our kids to grow up. Thank you so much.
You with the sad eyes, don't be discouraged. Oh, I realize it's hard to take courage in a world full of people. You can lose sight of it all, and the darkness inside you can make you feel so small. But I see your true colors shining through. I see your true colors, and that's why I love you. So don't be afraid to let them show. True colors are beautiful like a rainbow. Show me a smile then. Don't be unhappy, can't remember when I last saw you laughing. If this world makes you crazy and you've taken all you can bear, you can call me up, 'cause you know I'll be there. And I'll see your true colors shining through. I see your true colors, and that's why I love you. So don't be afraid to let them show. True colors are beautiful like a rainbow. If this world makes you crazy and you've taken all you can bear, you can call me up, 'cause you know I'll be there. And I'll see your true colors shining through. see your true colors, and that's why I love you. So don't be afraid to let them show true colors of beauty.